So this week I was talking to someone and they were telling me, about their day. We were catching up. And they mentioned that they were pretty nervous and even scared of this upcoming exam. And through our conversation, someone that I knew for a bit, and we've, had a pretty good relationship. And I stopped them. I said, hey, look, let's be straight up. Let's be honest. You're not scared of that exam. You have been prepared. You've been working your tail off. Like you've been putting in the work. You are not afraid of the exam. You are actually afraid of the outcome. You're afraid of what that outcome of the results of the exam may mean for your next step and how you move forward. And that's a completely different thing. And I had to challenge them because what I was noticing was that quote unquote fear that they was claiming was because of the exam, it was changing their behavior. It was causing them to procrastinate. It was causing them to delay. And what they were naming is that it's the exam, it's the exam. No, ma'am, Pam. It was not the exam you were afraid of. You were afraid of the next step, what the outcome could be, what the results of the potential exam could do for your future. And they got quiet. But I can tell it landed. And I've been sitting with that like ever since, I've witnessed this many times before within myself, with other people I've worked with students and my clients, and me recognizing that distinction between it's not often the thing that we say, it's the next step, it's the beyond, has me thinking about how many of us, myself included, are letting fear of the outcome run the show. Not just with exams, but with our conversations, our interactions, our relationships with people, the way we show up, even for the people we love the most. Fear of the outcome is quiet. It doesn't always announce itself. It's just the thing that's operating in the background that drives us forward. And half the time, we don't even realize that we've willingly given the keys over to fear. Now, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to just talk a little freely today, but I grew up without my dad in my life. And at some point, I don't know when it actually happened, I noticed something that I found myself oftentimes asking questions like, I guess it was as an adult, as I'm about to give this question, but am I doing enough to show up in the life of my wife? Am I being the man or the husband that she deserves? Am I doing and providing enough for my girls? Now, I know on the surface, that may sound like some really good questions, right? Very reflective questions, the kind that a thoughtful man asks himself to gain prominence or get better. But when I really got honest about kind of what was underneath those questions, it wasn't always reflection. If I'm honest, it was a little bit of fear. It was a little bit of the outcome of what would happen if I was not enough. See, fear that I was already behind because somehow, by not having an example growing up of what a marriage looks like, what does a husband look like, what does a good father look like, it was a fear that I would somehow fall short of what these people that mean the world to me actually needed. And here's the thing though, like I said, it was about recognition. I recognized that was going on. And that is the word that I want to use, is that recognition. I recognized it. Not because the experience broke me growing up or not having those things. Didn't break me because I was in a pit moment. Not because it held me back in any particular way. But more importantly, I recognized it because I was paying attention. I didn't just default through life and just said things like, well, this is just how I am. This is how I'm programmed. It was me being thoughtful and reflective about, what are the things that cause me to do the things that I'm doing? And I can tell you, once I saw it, once I recognized it, couldn't unsee it. And it would show up in little things about, me going overboard to ensure that things were handled. Doing a little too much. Maybe being so concerned that something was wrong. I would, pester or maybe continuously ask, is something wrong? Did I do things? And that's when I started to ask myself different questions, because I recognized that maybe I was being annoying, or maybe I was being overbearing or micromanaging. And that's when I started to ask myself different questions. Instead of thinking about what's the worst that could happen, because that's really what was driving it, right? When I think about my wife, I think about the girls, I think about the people I interact with, sometimes we default to what's the worst that could happen. I started asking myself, what if I chose to focus on what is the best case scenario? I started to think about what would my actions look like if I actually believed that things were going well, or think about the best possible outcome. How would I move differently? How would I talk differently? How would I just be different in moments when I'm focusing on the best possible outcome? And I'm telling you, that mental shift, it feels so maybe rudimentary. And I know you're yelling at me right now. Well, no, Emmanuel, when you think of worst case scenario, that's risk assessment, and you're making sure that the best possible outcome could occur because you're thinking about where the shoes can drop and where things can go wrong. Look, I'm a risk assessor. I think about those things all the time. But when I'm thinking about worst case scenarios, I'm planning for the worst. But I can tell you the shift is real when you start thinking about planning for the best. When you're already in that positive mindset about the best case scenario, the best interactions, assuming positive intent from when you're interacting with people and not being easily offended when things occur because I'm thinking the best. I can tell you that shift in your mental space is real. Because I think here's what we don't talk about enough. That fear of the worst case scenario or your thoughts, you may think it's protective, but I can tell you it doesn't only affect you. It affects how other people receive you. See, you can think that you're hiding things, right? And, people don't always know your motives. You can think that you're holding it all together, but I can tell you, people, I know it may feel kind of woo-woo or whatever, or energetic light and all that other stuff, but people can feel the energy that you walk with. And if you don't believe me, you feel the energy that people walk with too. So what makes you think that as you enter spaces, as you approach folks or they approach you or you interact, what makes you think that people are not perceptive to the energy that you give off? I can tell you, your friends feel it. Your significant other feels it. Your kids feel it. Shucks, just even if you're like at the coffee shop, the person sitting at the table next to you feels it. See, and when that becomes a thing and people feel it, when you're operating in that fear or that negative energy, when fear walks in, people start to brace a little bit. They start to expect that from us. But I can tell you, when fear walks in, people brace. But when love walks in, people open up. People's hearts open, minds open, their eyes get fixated on you. And, since I started this thing out about being a husband and being a parent, I think about parenting. Because this is where I see a lot of things show up. A lot of what we may call teaching, what we call preparing our kids, might just be a fear of things not turning out. And to be fair, I think about my mom. She did the amazing job that she could. I think about my sister, who also played a huge role in that. I think about parents who try to help their kids. They are guiding them, leading them because they're fearful of the outcomes that would happen, the life path that they choose, the decisions they make. And sometimes that causes us to hover. Sometimes that causes us to overcorrect. Sometimes that causes us to micromanage every little thing, and we tell ourselves it's all because we care. And the reality of it is we do. I got these two beautiful, amazing, people, daughters that look up to me. We care tremendously. So I know that you may be thinking about, as I'm talking, you might be thinking about your parents. I can tell you, just broadly, they may not have acted how you may have wanted them to, but they did it all because they cared through the capacity that they had to care with the limited resources, things that they had. They parented through it because I can tell you there's no playbook for this. There's books, but we're working through it in real time. And that care, that love, it's real. But a lot of times what's taking the wheel is that fear of the outcome. Fear of who they'll become if I loosen the grip. How am I preparing them for this cold, ugly world? The fear that struggles will reflect something about us. And I can tell you as a kid, like going up through it, as you're thinking through, as I'm talking, sometimes we don't feel the love through some of this stuff. Sometimes we feel the kid feels managed. And there's a difference in that. And they know the difference even when they can't put words to it. Just like us as adults and parents, we can't put words to the things that we're doing. A young person who's developing, they can't put words to it either. Now, let's flip it. What would it look like if love leads? Not passive love, but the love that says, I trust you, I trust me enough to be with you. I see who you're becoming and I believe in it. Love that gives people room to be human and figure it out. Love that isn't so consumed by that worst case scenario that forgets to enjoy the moments that we're actually in, even if some of those moments are tough. I can tell you for myself that shift has changed interactions. It's changed relationships. And honestly, I believe it can change the outcome as well. Because the thing that fear is so desperately trying to protect against, it's often the fear itself that can create it. See, when you come into tight, into anxious, into controlling, you get resistance from the other parties. But when you come in with trust and love and presence, you get something different. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going to be rough, right? Because, you're still talking about people, you're interacting with people, but you could actually help set the stage, either for a better interaction or a potential for a better outcome or a better path forward by you softening the ground a little bit, right? So, I don't know. Sorry, I probably rambled for 12 minutes, but it's just something that I've been thinking about for some time. And I just wanted to talk and just, offer you something to sit with. What would change in one conversation or one interaction if we allowed love to lead instead of fear? Hope this helps, guys. And as always, I love you much.